Noid 2 is an incredible lesson on game design, I think. Or maybe it's a terrible one. It's a game that just kinda came out of nowhere a couple weeks ago, made by a teeny tiny team for a game jam competition. It's definitely not an official sequel to the NES game it's based on, and also I'm pretty sure they don't have the rights to Domino's Pizza, and I don't even know who has the rights to Noid anymore, but whatever, let's talk about it. So what makes Noid 2 interesting is that it's terrible. Intentionally. It's terrible to look at, terrible to listen to, and has a convoluted and stupefying storyline, if you can call it that, and the single most unlikable protagonist imaginable. Jeez, he's gross. The only thing that elevates it is its gameplay. This game is incredibly fun to play. Weird, huh? What does it have that other games don't? What even puts it on the radar, much less makes it a more enjoyable and memorable experience than even some AAA games can offer? Well, I've got some ideas about that, and here they are, in no particular order. Noid 2 is a game with a simple and very unified focus. It isn't packed with enemies or gimmicks or new gameplay challenges or whatever. There's no kart driving section. Everything in the game revolves around navigation, and it never strays far from that core principle. Like, check out these pepperoni power-ups. Do you see a score counter at the corner of this screen? No. That's right, these things don't do anything at all. They're just there to help you read the level layout easier. Speaking of which, the level design is easy to read at a glance, and there's no clutter. In fact, there's really kinda no props in the world at all, which really works well with how incredibly ugly the game is, but also makes understanding the layout of a jumping puzzle pretty much instantaneous. The basic mechanics of Noid's movement are super intuitive and elegant. There's really only a couple moves in the game, but each one has a clear use, and it's easy and fun to string moves together for long combos. This is the stuff I love in a platformer. Finally, this is a game that knows when to quit. It's maybe a grand total of 3 hours long, which is just right to be satisfied instead of bored and frustrated. What's neat about all this is that every pro you can attribute is purely mechanical. I mean, like, I guess being really hard to look at is charming in that real monsters kind of way, but if the gameplay was bad, the aesthetic would definitely be considered bad too, right? Noid 2 is a game that's so focused on the gameplay that really the presentation barely matters. But we'll get back to that. For now, here's that big lesson I said we'd get from this mess. Or maybe it's 2 lessons. Or like 1 lesson in 2 parts. Part 1. Here in 2017, this is sort of old news. Noid 2 was put together by a team of less than half a dozen in under a month on a budget of $0. Like, no duh, right? In the past 5 years or so, we've seen dozens of great games made by small teams with low budgets that took the gaming world by storm. So then, how come the games industry is still panicking that AAA game development is unsustainable? How come the titans of our childhood still have one foot in the grave, surviving on a prayer that the newest Assassin's Creed or whatever will sell enough to make next month's rent? Well, that's our lesson too. Volume of content and fun aren't directly proportional, and I think a focused experience is probably more likely to be a fun game than even the most sprawling unfocused one. We all know that a game that gets everything else right but has a terrible core mechanic isn't a great experience, but Noid 2, interestingly, makes the opposite statement. A game that's a total catastrophe, even intentionally, but has a tight, unified focus on a great core mechanic can still be a great game. See, the average player doesn't care about how big a game's budget was. They don't care about the latest breakthrough in Radiant AI, or about whether a ponytail is hanging realistically, or about an unprecedented new way to interact with the living, breathing world around you. The average player cares about whether they're having fun. And the more complicated a game is, the easier it is for the fun to get fragmented and spread out. The player has a little bit of fun driving and a little fun fighting, and the story is kind of fun, and oh, they'll like this character, she's fun. So when do the players actually enjoy themselves? And hey, that's not always wrong. Some games play the long game and still weave a memorable experience. And not every experience is hanging from the one hook of pure, raw enjoyability. In fact, I think my next video is going to be about how important boredom can be to an overall experience. But when AAA developers are running themselves ragged chasing mass appeal through complicated worlds and big stories and a million little gimmicks that cost $1 million and a year of development time each, it seems like maybe they forgot why we play video games in the first place. For fun. Noid is a game about navigation, jumping around. So that's the stat they put all their fun points into. There's no combat, no interesting characters, no immersive, expansive worlds, but dang, jumping on stuff is really fun. It's intuitive, it feels good, it's challenging but not too frustrating, it's exciting to do. Assassin's Creed Syndicate or whatever has been on my intend to playlist for years, but it can wait one more day. I'm having a cool time over here in this disaster. Also, it's free. I don't know why Domino's would have a problem with this game, but you know how these things go, so get it while it's hot. I'll put a link in the description or whatever.